The skies over Earth burned. From the shattered windows of the orbital watchtower, Dr. Evelyn Marris watched plumes of fire spiral across the northern hemisphere, like angry gods clawing at the surface. The Tsar horde had broken through the Martian defensive ring only a week ago. Earth was now a wounded beast, and its enemies were circling in. "Satellite feed is gone," said Commander Brill, his voice flat. "They've taken Geneva. Ground zero in 24 hours, maybe less." No one in the war room said anything. What was left to say? Evelyn turned from the screen and stared at the cold steel floor of Vault Helix, the facility carved deep into the ice of the Arctic Circle. It was Earth's final project. Not a superweapon, not a fleet. Just one man. One last nightmare. And that man was her brother. 6 months ago, Lieutenant Jason Marris had been reported killed in action during the Battle of Thebes Ring. What no one knew, what only a handful of high-clearance officials were allowed to know, was that Jason had survived, though barely. His spine had been shattered, both legs lost, lungs collapsed, and neurological functions decimated. But his brain still worked, and that was all they needed. Project Chimera was not born out of triumph. It was born in desperation, an answer to the Tsar's regenerative physiology and overwhelming physical strength. If humans couldn't outgun or outnumber them, maybe they could outmonster them. When General Karan entered the lab that morning, his face was stone. "It's time." Evelyn said nothing. She stared at her brother's image on the medical interface. Jason's body lay in a suspended tank of nutrient-rich fluid, his form now barely recognizable. Plated metal segments across his ribs, titanium spine braces, clusters of neural threads running like wires across his skull. 6 mechanical limbs protruded from incisions in his back, spider-like appendages designed for high-speed close-quarter slaughter. "We're not ready," she whispered. "The cortical overlays are unstable. The neural feedback loops." "Doctor." Karan's tone was cold. "Geneva's gone. Africa is burning. Half of our orbit is silent. Your brother is Earth's last defense now." She looked at him with eyes that hadn't cried in years. "You said we'd have more time. We're out of time." The general left her in silence. Evelyn sat beside the observation glass for hours, watching the soft rise and fall of Jason's chest as the machines kept him alive. She remembered their childhood, the backyard treehouse he built with bare hands and crooked nails, how he snuck out of their bunk during winter storms to check the generators, the way he used to sing under his breath when he thought no one was listening. He had always protected people. Now, they were using him to kill. That evening, Evelyn accessed the Chimera console. Security alarms deactivated one by one as her fingers moved across the controls. The final protocol authorization blinked red. "Activate Unit 001, Marris, J." "Are you sure?" She hesitated. Her hand hovered over the key. Her thumb trembled, and she placed her palm down. "Forgive me, Jason." The glass tank hissed as fluid drained. Jason's body, now a fusion of man and metal, hung in silence. The spider limbs folded tightly against his back. His eyelids twitched. A single breath escaped his lips. Jason's eyes opened, not like waking from sleep, more like rebooting. He looked around the sterile chamber. His limbs didn't respond as expected. His breath came in shallow bursts. Monitors beeped. Red lights pulsed. He tried to speak, but no voice came out. Just a guttural sound, like a whisper buried under static. Then he saw her, Evelyn, behind the glass. He mouthed her name. He reached for the glass. His hand was wrong, blackened metal and grafted flesh. Serrated fingertips. "No," he gasped, his voice raw. What did you do to me?" Evelyn's voice trembled through the intercom. "I brought you back." Tears welled in his eyes. "You should have let me die." Evelyn turned away. She couldn't bear the sight, but her words still reached him. "I couldn't. We needed you." Outside, the earth continued to fall. But inside Vault Helix, a new terror stirred, forged not by alien science or cosmic might, but by humanity's own desperate hand. The last hope of mankind was no hero. He was a monster, and they built him on purpose. Birth of the weapon. The cold hurt more than the metal. Jason lay on the metal slab, naked beneath the glaring lights, his body stiff, and alien. Wires curled from his spine like roots torn from the earth. 6 segmented limbs, black and blood-stained, were retracted tight against his back, twitching subtly, like living things with a will of their own. He wasn't alone. Behind the one-way glass, a dozen scientists whispered as machines beeped. Charts spiked. Muscle reaction tests lit up in green. Cameras locked onto his every movement. But Jason's eyes searched for only one person. And there she was, Evelyn, watching him, judging him, mourning him. He couldn't tell which. The lights dimmed. The clamps retracted from his wrists and ankles. The voice of an AI announced softly, Unit 001, Cognitive Response Active. Engage Simulation Sequence. Threat Protocol A. Jason barely had time to breathe before the floor beneath him split open and a quadruped training drone lunged at him, snarling with artificial fangs. His instincts took over. He didn't know how he moved, only that he did. One of the limbs shot out from his back with a horrifying crack, stabbing through the drone's chest in a blur. The others followed, whipping around in a flurry of strikes and sweeps. The drone shattered into pieces, its head rolling across the floor. Silence. Jason stared down at the broken machine. His breathing quickened. The limbs retracted. Blood dripped from their metal tips. He fell to his knees. Later, in his cell, if it could be called that, Jason stared at the glass window where he knew Evelyn was watching. It was like some twisted fishbowl. He pressed his metal fingers to the wall. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, he scratched one word into the glass. Brother. It was shaky, childlike, but the word burned with purpose. Evelyn saw it. Her hand trembled. His neural patterns are stabilizing, one scientist noted, flipping through digital readouts. Pain suppression is active, motor control improving. General Karan entered the room behind them. And the aggression? The technician hesitated. It's rising, controlled, but emotional triggers are unstable. Good, Karan said coldly. We want rage. The Tsar understands rage. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. He's not a beast. If you push him too far, he'll break. Karan looked her in the eye. No, doctor. You don't understand. We broke him already. You just haven't accepted it. That night, Jason had a dream, if it could be called that. He was in the forest behind their childhood home. Birds chirped. Sunlight broke through the canopy. Evelyn was laughing as she chased a puppy through the trees. Jason reached for her, smiling. Then something clicked. A low, metallic screech echoed through the forest. The trees melted away. The sky turned red. His limbs, all 8 of them, tore through the ground, slicing trees and shadows alike. He heard screaming. His sister's voice. Jason. Jason stopped. He awoke with a start. The restraints on his arms snapped taut as his heart pounded. Alarms wailed. Blood dripped from his mouth where he had bitten through his lip. The limbs hadn't fully retracted. Later, Evelyn entered the chamber for the first time without the glass between them. No weapons. No guards. Just her. Jason sat in the corner, knees drawn to his chest, bare except for a pair of black shorts. His spine gleamed under the flickering lights. The limbs stayed retracted, though they twitched at her presence. I remember your laugh, he said quietly. I dreamed about it. Just now. Evelyn knelt beside him, unsure whether to speak or cry. I don't know where I end and this begins, he whispered. I feel everything. Every wire. Every needle. And I hear them, Eve. In my head. Voices. Protocols. Commands. I'm sorry, she said, tears rolling down her cheek. You're not supposed to be in pain anymore. He looked at her, really looked. You think this is about pain? They made me a killer. You helped them. I wanted to save you. You didn't save me, he said, eyes shining with fury and grief. You built something else and filled it with what was left of me. Evelyn stood, wiping her tears. You're wrong. You're still my brother. You're still Jason Marris. He laughed bitterly. Then why am I so good at killing? Later that week, they released him into a live combat simulation. Their clones grown from captured DNA. The result wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. He moved like a nightmare. Limbs impaled from behind, sliced cleanly through armored chitin, and tore the heads from alien beasts in a blink. At one point, the observers saw him leap 30 feet onto a war beast's back, plant 2 limbs in its spine, and rip it open from the inside. When the lights came back up, he was soaked in alien ichor. He stood alone, silent. But as he walked off the field, something changed. He looked up at the observation window and turned his back. In the control room, Evelyn stared blankly at the blood-stained screens. "He's ready," said Karan. "No," she whispered. "He's surviving." The monster unleashed. The skies above New Geneva boiled with fire. From the command deck of a crumbling tower, Evelyn Marris watched as evacuation ships failed to breach the Tsar blockade. Screams echoed through the communications feed. The last stronghold of humanity was falling, not to slow, methodical siege, but to a storm of rage and claws. The Tsar weren't just attacking. They were erasing. "Deploy Chimera," General Karan ordered without turning from the glass. Evelyn's blood froze. "He's not ready. He's the only one left." Jason stood in the drop bay, wrapped in reinforced armor designed to shift and flex around his cybernetic limbs. Each one now gleamed with sharpened tips and plasma-threaded blades. His chest rose and fell slowly, unnaturally calm. He didn't speak as the final checks ran. The HUD flashed green. Target, Tsar Command Cluster. Mid-level breach. Primary objective, eradicate. Evelyn stepped into the launch chamber, helmet in hand. She walked toward him cautiously. "Jason," she said softly, "listen to me." He turned to her, not with anger, not with hatred, but with something worse. Emptiness. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I wanted to look you in the eye before I become what they made." "No." She reached up and placed a hand gently on his chest. "Before you remember who you are." He stared down at her hand. "I don't feel human anymore." She stepped closer. "Then don't fight for humanity. Fight for me. For who you were. For the boy who used to rescue animals. Who snuck food to the sick kids at the camp. The one who stood between bullies and strangers without blinking." His lip twitched just slightly. "That boy died a long time ago. Then let this version of you, choose how it ends." He nodded. "I will." The drop pod exploded through the storm clouds and hit the battlefield like a meteor. Jason emerged from the crater, steam curling off his armor. Around him, chaos reigned. Tsar warriors leaping from rooftops, swarming human defenders, shredding barricades like paper. Without hesitation, he moved. The first wave of Tsar lunged, blades and limbs flashing. Jason didn't block. He responded. 2 spider limbs erupted from his back mid-sprint, skewering the nearest alien and flinging it into a concrete wall. Another limb whipped out in an arc, decapitating 2 more in one smooth, practiced motion. The streets ran red with black ichor. A squad of surviving soldiers stared in awe and horror as he tore through a 6-limbed brute, ramming a blade into its chest and pulling apart its ribs. "Is that one of ours?" someone whispered. "That's not a man," another soldier murmured. "That's vengeance." Jason didn't hear them. He moved through the war zone like a phantom of rage. Buildings collapsed around him. Plasma blasts scorched the air. Every movement was instinct, every kill a blur of speed and power. And then he saw it. The Tsar War Queen, towering over the ruins near the old government core. 10 feet tall, mandibles twitching, bark-like armor cracked with bioluminescent veins. It locked eyes with Jason and roared, a sound that split the air. He ran straight toward it. They clashed with earth-shaking force. The Queen swiped. One of Jason's limbs deflected it. He leapt, drove a blade in her chest, but was flung away by her tail. He landed hard, skidding across rubble, coughing blood. Sparks flew from his shoulder where wires were torn. But he got up. Again, the Queen pounced. This time Jason anticipated it. He jumped, caught her midair with all 6 limbs, and held her. She screeched and sprayed acidic fluid. It burned across his chest, sizzling through armor. His HUD flickered. Flesh blistered. Still, he held her. He activated the overload injectors in his spine. Tubes hissing as combat stimulants surged into his bloodstream. The pain became background noise. Jason screamed and drove his full strength into the queen's body, ripping her apart. With a final thrust, he pierced her skull and drove it into the ground. Then silence. The battlefield stilled. The remaining Tsar, sensing their matriarch slain, scattered and fled. A cheer rose among the soldiers. Drones captured footage, already broadcasting across the net. The monster saved US. But Jason didn't join in. He stood alone in the wreckage, steaming, bleeding, breathing heavy. Around him, humans stared with something far colder than awe. Fear. A child, no older than 10, peeked out from a shelter nearby. Jason turned toward her. She stared, wide-eyed and trembling, then burst into tears, not for what the aliens had done, but at him. Jason froze. He looked down at his hands, dripping in alien blood. He saw his reflection in a puddle. Eyes glowing, skin scarred, body distorted. A shape no child should ever see. Evelyn's voice crackled through the calm. "Jason, are you still with me?" He answered after a long pause. "I killed the monsters," he said, voice hollow. "So why do I still feel like one?" What we choose to become. It was over. The Tsar were gone. Across the fractured globe, the last of the alien hive fleets had retreated beyond Sol. Their queens were dead. Their warriors scattered. What remained of humanity stood blinking in the light of hard-won survival. But peace brought no celebration. Not in the war rooms. Not in the ruins. Not in the hearts of those who had survived by losing everything. And certainly not in Jason Marris. Evelyn walked through the ruins of Sector 9, once a thriving suburb, now silent and ash-covered. Her boots crunched over glass and twisted metal. The air was thick with dust and the ghosts of memory. She found him in the shell of their childhood home. The second floor had collapsed. The tree in the backyard, the one they'd built a swing on, was blackened and split. And there, sitting on the broken steps, was Jason. Or what was left of him. His armor was gone, stripped piece by piece. His back limbs hung limp, broken and scorched. His face was bruised, jaw cut open in 2 places. A faint glow still pulsed behind his irises. But his eyes, they were human again. "I used to dream about this place," he murmured as she approached. "Before the machines took the dreams." Evelyn didn't speak. She simply sat beside him. For the first time in months, she didn't see the soldier. Or the monster. Just her brother, small, tired, wounded. Jason held out a scrap of torn paper. It was a child's drawing, scrawled in charcoal on the back of a report. Stick figures. A house. A son. 2 kids holding hands. "I've been drawing it from memory," he said, trying to remember who I was before. Evelyn's voice cracked. "You still are." He looked at her. "No, I was a man who protected people. Now they run from me." She closed her hand around his. "You did protect them, Jason. You saved them." "At what cost?" he said. "I heard a kid scream when she saw me, like I was the real monster. And maybe she's right." Silence settled between them like ash. That night, Evelyn made a decision. She returned to EarthGov Command and stood before the High Tribunal. "You want to shut him down," she said. "You want to put him in a cage because you're afraid." "Dr. Marris," one official said, "he is unstable, unpredictable, and capable of city-scale destruction. We cannot risk another incident." "He's not a bomb," she snapped. "He's a person. My brother." Another voice cut in, colder, firmer. "He's a weapon, and weapons don't get to choose." Jason watched from the security feed as Evelyn argued for him. As she shouted, pleaded, stood her ground. He knew then that she still believed in him, even when he didn't. So he made his choice. The next morning, Jason stood at the center of Unity Square, unarmed, exposed, and flanked by dozens of cameras and drones. The public had gathered in frightened clusters. Armed guards stood ready. Scientists watched from rooftops. EarthGov had authorized immediate termination if he posed a threat. But Jason didn't come to fight. He came to speak. "When the Tsar came, we weren't ready," he began, voice hoarse but clear. "So you built something that could fight them. You tore me apart and rebuilt me into something that could kill." He looked out at the crowd. "But in the end, we have to ask ourselves, if we become monsters to survive, what's left of us afterward?" He paused. People stared. No one moved. You called me a hero, he said. But what I remember most is a child crying when she looked at me. That's the legacy I leave behind. Not medals, not monuments. Fear. He looked toward the camera, toward the world. You can't keep making people like me. You can't make monsters and then expect them to forget what they've done. He raised his hand slowly. No weapons, just surrender. This is my choice. My final one. And then he walked, slowly, limping, shoulders slumped, into the sea. Evelyn ran to the shore, her feet sinking into wet sand. She screamed for him, but he didn't turn back. Waves crashed around him. The water surged to his chest, then his shoulders. His limbs folded in around him like wings. He paused once and looked back at her. Then he whispered, just loud enough for her implant to catch, "Thank you for trying." And then he was gone. The last weapon of Earth, buried in the silence he chose. Weeks later, Evelyn sat in the ruins of their childhood treehouse. Around her were boxes of Jason's drawings, crude, childlike memories of home, family, love. She placed them into a time capsule and sealed it with a trembling hand. Above her, the stars were clear for the first time in years. They had survived the war. But peace, she realized, wasn't just about living. It was about remembering who we were.